Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill could not make it, so in her stead.
Oh, come on, what kind of groan is that?
We have Senator McKee. You know, today
Yeah, it's a big
marks
turnout.
A very sad day in America. We are officially in a constitutional crisis. And if I may, I want to share a few other things for you to think about, because it is just wonderful that you have shown up. I want you to think about this. In 2017,
What's the format going to be with the two of us? Do we just have more free time to talk?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Points. In 2021, Murphy won Bergen County by less than 5 points. The Democrats keep losing. Okay, why? There were 20% fewer votes for Democrats in Bergen County in 2024. So where did they go? We contend that the reason why voter turnout is so low is because people do not feel they are being heard. They don't feel that they are being represented. But tonight we have candidates who are going to prove that they are listening and that they are here to answer your questions. I want to thank Ruth Dugan for hosting this event. We have always been great. And I also want to invite all of you, if you're thirsty, we have water. We have questions if you are scratching your head what to ask. And I also want to invite all of you to at some point, not right now, but I have written down, there's a website for the commissioners who are running on the Democratic ticket. The website is called changebergencounty.org. And two of the people running are here. If they would just stand, please. We have John Vitale and we have Dolores Whitco. And these are independent Democrats who are to listen to you. I want you to go to their website and sign up. With no further ado, let's do this. Thank you.
So I also want you to know that Bergen County is going to have, and New Jersey is going to have a real primary this year. Thank you to Ann and Kim. There is no line. Somebody, however, has forgotten to remind our county chair people, because they behave as if there is still a line in this horrific period of time in this country. We need a big tent for Democrats to feel comfortable, to be involved, to be like you guys are right here, coming to meet the candidates, willing to work with the candidates. This is what it should be as a Democratic Party.
Money. That's there for the city.
What?
It's not about money on the thing.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are not. Unfortunately, we
You got your
are
notepad?
in Bergen County specifically.
No.
And by the way, there are other candidates here. Donna Benny is running for Assembly for District 39. So we have choices. We always have choices. Not always, but we do now. Unfortunately, in Bergen County, we have a chairman who is supporting one of the candidates that is not here, and has actually stopped anything like this from happening, and has actually, exactly, this is the only forum that was available to the other candidates, to all the candidates. This was the only one in Bergen County. Bergen County, the largest county in this state, is in a silo because we have a chairman who refuses to allow people to gather. A chairman who has fed his own friends and not done the right thing for this state, or certainly not for this county. Fairview is the center of the universe in Bergen County. Fairview
Yeah.
is the center of the universe in Bergen County.
Yes.
We have a assembly candidate who ran before, is running again, never really participated in the election. It was just a spot that he was going to take. And his reward was to be the superintendent of schools in Fairview. We have another councilman from another town in 39 who has done things that I think are not appropriate as a Democrat. He's the assistant superintendent in Fairview. When you look at the $600 million that were added to the budget last year, which was really an overrun, Fairview has 1,500 students. Fairview, in that $600 million budget, got $10 million for their schools. So as you can see, who is being fed what they want and what they need. So let me tell you what happened with this forum. We opened the door for all of you to come and sit here and hear the candidates. We thought it was appropriate to do that in Bergen County, again, the largest county. We reached out to every candidate. I was told that Congress is in session next week, so we changed the date from the 26th to the 19th today. What happened after that was that Congressman Gottheimer said regardless he wouldn't be able to make it, and we had to take his name off, which was fine. Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill apparently couldn't make it. She did send a surrogate, who's very uncomfortable right now.
Wait, one more time. Ooh.
I heard from Mayor Raz Baraka this morning that he could not make it. I heard from former Senator Sweeney last night that he could not make it. Now, I have to believe that there was pressure. It was just too coincidental. And Sean Spiller has not really done any, we were all hoping that he would come to this one, and he said he would, and as it turns out, he did not. But that is what happens when you're in a county that's in a silo. And I think that it's time that we have an uprising. And I think it's time that we say, enough is enough is enough.
I think we could string you up as an example of what's bad.
Because Democrats cannot win if we don't speak to each other, talk to each other, sit with each other, have conversations that are meaningful, and meet each other.
No, I know.
Can't do it. So it cannot be for the sake of
Murphy probably rejects, probably looks back and is regrets not having you as the AG in hindsight. When now he looks at black,
from the
you know.
bottom up. Well, they are worried about the up because that does help them. So again, I'm grateful for all of you coming here. You've proven that we care, and you've proven that we need to be heard, and you've proven that you will continue to do this so that we can save our democracy, because it needs saving right now, and it needs saving on every level. So thank you for being here. I know there's some people that want to ask me questions. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'll tell you who I am. I'm Ruth Dugan. I ran for Senate in District 39 and 21. I've been the district chair. I've been on the Democratic National Committee. I was the campaign manager for a president in a primary in New Jersey and the campaign manager for a governor in a primary in New Jersey. And I was married to an icon, Jim Dugan, who was a state chairman and a state senator. So, now what I'd like to do is give these two wonderful gentlemen an
You go first.
opportunity
I'll be a little longer. I
to
guess.
do an opening remarks.
Whatever order you're in charge, Ruth.
If I was in charge, these seats would be full.
Go ahead.
I hear traffic was really bad.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks very much. My name is Senator John McKeon. I've actually been in the state legislature. I'm from Essex County, represented for a period of time part of Morris, and it's now part of the state, particularly Clifton. And I'm really honored to be here. I guess you were all expecting Bruce Springsteen, and instead you got the cover band. So speaking of rock stars, I'm standing next to one.
Thank you.
In the form of Steve Fulop, and if the rest of these tables were filled, I would say the same thing. I'm very proud of the Democratic field. I will proudly stand next to and campaign like heck for whoever it is that comes on top of this primary process, and I hope to God all of you as people that are committed to the principles of our party, saving our democracy, saving our state, will all do the same. My just thought to you is that
make sure you point the mic at your mouth.
okay, I was so good up to that point. I will mention to this group that Cicero, right, all of our founding fathers look back on Cicero for the persons that we might look to today when we read the Federalist Papers or otherwise. And Cicero said something that I always remember: you may not win, but you deserve to win. And that was you. So I'm so proud of the elected effort that you put forward. And when it comes to it, we're all part of a spoke and a wheel. So let me take just a couple minutes. I said we have 5 extraordinary men who are running for governor. I want to tell you about an extraordinary woman. Her name is Mikey Sherrill. At age 18, she swore an oath to her country, and some 35 years later, she continues to serve and live up to those words so very long ago. She graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy and was assigned to an aircraft carrier where she served as a helicopter pilot. Not only did she serve as a pilot, but she was a squadron commander. And for anybody that's not a military nerd like maybe I am, that she was responsible for scores of lives and up to 24 other aircrafts. She then was transferred to be a naval intelligence officer, where her job was to deal directly with her Russian counterparts on nuclear disarmament. You think Trenton is tough? I think she'd be ready. Now, from there, Mikey, upon discharge of the Navy, went on to the London School of Economics, then Georgetown School of Law. Time to cash in? No. It was time to join the U.S. Attorney's Office, whereas she focused on prison reentry, she focused on community policing, which, if you think of the timing, was a really big deal then, and literally upheld the laws. Now, circle backwards, sadly 8 years ago, when we all had a shock, and Secretary Clinton, still my daughters haven't gotten over it, wasn't successful. Mikey Sherrill knew that there was a mission, and looking at Donald Trump 2.1, realized that we needed to do something. So what did she do? She stepped up in what was the 11th district. She ran against one of the most powerful men in the Republican, in the legislature, the head of the Appropriations Committee. His family had come over on the Mayflower, I mean, you name it, in about as red of a district you would be. And you know what she did? On the backs of the best grassroots movement, a lot like the one Forward United that we're talking about here, she flipped that district. And we flipped the Congress, And then she was a part of the solution for the next 2 years to keep that tyrant in check. She was the one that wrote an editorial to the Washington Post, and 2 days later, Nancy Pelosi called for impeachment hearings. That had to do with the nonsense going on with Ukraine, looking into Biden. I guess old grudges don't die, do they? She then helped usher in 4 amazing years of President Biden. And so, where are we now? She has a vision for New Jersey. She wants to apply all of her years of service, what she learned in the Congress, how she deeply feels passionate, somebody who listens, as it relates to being our governor. And that's her view. So, look, I really very much look forward to being here, listening to your questions, and sharing with you the best I can what her vision is. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
You're getting really good at that. Let's see. Test. I can handle it. So first let me take a second and say thank you for organizing this. I'm going to come on the other side of this so I feel a little bit more comfortable. And let me take your mic if that's all right. This thing is a little feedback.
Gotta keep it close to your mouth.
Can you hear me in the back okay? Okay. I do about 4 or 5 of the town halls per week now, more than other candidates. And most of them end up being kind of this Q&A where they're unscripted and they're really aggressive and fair. And it's an asset because I think that our campaign is different than any of the others. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that because we're more direct and specific with what we are going to do to change Trenton in painstaking detail. And the hope is that you're going to leave here tonight and say, he said 27 things that I can agree with and I could see how he'll execute on that, and 3 things I didn't like, but he's different in the fact that he's not talking in abstract and platitudes, he's telling you specifically what he will do. All 6 of us have great bios. Some run on their bios. They say, this is the reason why I'm qualified. I think we're in a moment in time where people need direct, concrete answers on what we are going to do to defend New Jersey in the situation that it is today. And we're going to talk about that stuff. I'm sure we have a lot of time because other people didn't show up, so I'm really excited. I will tell you that our campaign is different, and it's in an untested lane in the Democratic primary. Some of the other candidates have said, we're going to go with the political machines that exist. And even in a lineless world, they've said that I still believe that the lines and these political machines exist. And I'm going to bet that they will carry the day on what a campaign is successful or failure. I've taken a different approach. I've said that I believe that we can change New Jersey if you create accountability throughout the entire system. And accountability means primaries, not only at the governor's spot, but also down ballot. When Ruth said earlier, and I'm going to tell you about myself in a second, but when Ruth said earlier about candidates that you have a choice for the first time, part of the reason for that is because a year and a half ago when I started my campaign, I said, I am going to try and energize young people, people that didn't have a chance to get involved in office, give them the support that they need to create choice for you. Now, why was it something that I was willing to do? Because I thought about it, I said, look, I'm already going to be spending millions of dollars in communicating with you. I'm going to be on TV, I'm going to send you mail, not as much as Sean Spiller, but I will send you mail. But the reality is that I'm already communicating, so it didn't cost me anything additional. So what we did was, we did this whole thing. Does anybody want to run for office? Apply online. 150 people applied throughout New Jersey. And then we had this activist group in each county, people that you would know would screen these candidates. And they would say, okay, this is a good one, a bad one. And then they would tell me who to invite to run with us. Okay? And we settled on 40 candidates throughout New Jersey. Doctors, lawyers, former mayors, former council people, people that you would be proud to represent. I guarantee you could see their bios. Now, the political machine hates that I'm doing this because the patronage and the money in the organization, the corruption tax that you pay every single day is not based only on who's the top of the ticket. It's the graph that happens in the positions that people don't know. It's the assembly people and the senators and the assembly people and the county commissioners that actually are the people that you say, oh, they're affiliated with so-and-so, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they're on Kamala's team or Joe Biden's team. In reality, that's not the way it works. It's one person selecting them. So we're creating accountability. Now, if you don't believe that accountability is important, then ask yourself, why last year did the Trenton change Oprah, public records access? Or the year before, campaign finance laws? Thousands of people went down to Trenton and said, this is bad policy. Bad. But they still did it because they believe that they are accountable to the political boss there as opposed to being accountable to you. Primaries are a good thing. Primaries are about choice. They create better candidates, sharper messages, better general election candidates. And so our campaign is different because we are pushing that throughout the state of New Jersey because we're unapologetic about change. And so that's the starting point of where we're different. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, okay? Because I think that is a good place to kind of introduce myself to you. So if you told me 20 years ago I'd be standing in Westwood, New Jersey, running for governor, I'd tell you it is highly unlikely because I wasn't registered to vote, I wasn't involved. This was a very foreign world for me. I come from a family of immigrants. My family is Holocaust survivors. Most of my family was in Auschwitz. 35 members were taken there, 7 survived. They immigrated to this country. I settled, or my parents settled in Edison, New Jersey, and my father had a deli in Newark growing up. I proudly say I know more about the deli business than any gubernatorial candidate in the country. And my mom had an immigration services business helping people get immigration into this country. And that's the environment I grew up with. When I graduated college, I went to Binghamton undergrad to play soccer, and then I went to Columbia, and I went to NYU for my master's in public administration and my MBA. I got a job at a prestigious investment bank, Goldman Sachs. It's a very prestigious place to get a job. You can imagine how proud my parents were. It is a hard trajectory to get into, 35, 40 interviews, immigrant family, a kid on a good trajectory to make a lot of money. And I was on the trading floor, 9/11 happened. I promise that everybody in this room probably has a 9/11 moment where they could tell you where they were at that time and how it changed their trajectory on their life. For me, it forced me to reconsider what I wanted to do with my life. I went to my managers at Goldman Sachs and said I wanted to leave and I was going to enlist in the Marine Corps. And they thought I was crazy. And they said, normally people don't do that. And I said I thought it was important to do, and I viewed it at the time as really a partial payment for citizenship. I viewed it as an appreciation for the things that this country gave my family as immigrants. And so I left Goldman. I went on the enlisted side because I wanted to be with the workers. I went down to Paris Island, spent some time in boot camp, and then was deployed out to Iraq with the first wave of troops up to Baghdad. What you all saw in shock and awe, I guess I was there the second day we crossed from Kuwait into Iraq. When I came back to the States, I was still not involved, still not registered to vote. Still, this is a foreign world to me. But the mayor of Jersey City at the time was a guy by the name of Glenn Cunningham. He was the first African-American mayor in the history of Jersey City and a super popular guy. And he was a Marine. And Marines have this camaraderie, and he felt that he wanted to recognize everybody that was deployed and came back and give him a city proclamation. It's my first time ever at City Hall. He invites me over there with my family, gives me a city proclamation. He invites me into his office. And you know when you speak to somebody and you connect with them and you feel a really good bond, but just a good conversation, like a good connection. I spent about 2 hours with him. Asked me a lot of questions. What was it like in Iraq? What did you see? Why did you leave Goldman Sachs? That was a weird thing. What did your parents think? What did your family think? Et cetera, et cetera. And I answered it. It was good conversation. People were curious at the time. I didn't talk to Cunningham for maybe another 6 months, because why would I? I was trying to get my career back in finance. I was leaving Wall Street one day, and I get a phone call, and it's the mayor. It's a weird thing, because I didn't have a relationship with a guy like that. So he gets on the phone. I'm taken aback. I said, "Hi, Mayor. How are you?" He says, "Good, Steve. I'd like to talk to you about something." And as embarrassing as it was, I was a guy a week earlier who had called about a parking issue. So I thought he was calling about that. So I said, "Mayor," I said, "it's very inspiring. You call me personally about the parking issue. It's not that important." And he's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." He said, "I'd like to talk to you, though. I'd like you to come to my office, City Hall. I'd like to have a conversation with you." I said, "Okay." So we set a time 2 days later, and I went into City Hall, my second time at City Hall. And I go into his office, and he starts talking a little bit about this coming June primary, 20 years ago. He says, "This coming June primary, Bob Menendez," maybe you've heard of him, Bob Menendez, is going to run a primary. He's our congressman at the time. He's going to run a whole slate of candidates. He's going to run for Congress, then somebody for county clerk, then somebody for county surrogate underneath, and these county committee seats underneath. And Cunningham says, "We're going to run somebody for Congress and county surrogate and county committee seats. underneath on our side. I said, okay, sounds great. And he says, look, what I'm going to tell you, you may have an adverse reaction to. I said, okay. He said, I want you to think about it, though, and I'm going to tell you that people who go far in elected office, they generally start when they're young and they build over time. I said, okay. And he said, most of them lose before they win. That's generally the works, whether you're George Bush or Bill Clinton, you lose before you win, but you build over time. I said, okay, sounds good. So he said, so I'd like you to think about what I'd want you to do is to run for Congress against Bob Menendez. And I said exactly what you said. I said, can you repeat that? And he says it again. And I said, look, Mayor, I'm not registered. I'm not involved in any of this. Let me think about that. And I left, stood outside City Hall, and I called my parents, I called my friends, and I told them the story I just told you. I said, I was at City Hall. They all said, why were you at City Hall? I said, that's not even the weirdest part about the story. Let me get to the next part. I told them what I just told you. They all said the same thing. They're like, are you sure that's what the mayor said to you? And I'm like, I'm telling you, this is what happened. And I slept on it, and I called him the next day, and I said, I will do it. And I registered to vote, and I thought that it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience I would tell my grandkids. That's what I thought at the time. And so we started this campaign for Congress, and a week before the election, he had a massive heart attack while campaigning with me and passed away. It was on the cover of the New York Times at the time. And needless to say, I never became a congressman, never happened. But those 6 months changed my life, where I'm on this campaign trail with this guy, and people are coming up to me saying, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And I'm a nobody. And they're asking for help on local issues and state issues and federal issues. And it inspired me to say, that is what I want to do with my life. It's more important, the public service component, than financial service. The following year, I ran for mayor. I ran for councilperson in Jersey City, outside of the political organization. We won a very tough fight. Hudson County is like Bergen, where it's a tough, sharp elbows, a tough place to win outside of the political organization. We won a council seat. It was a big deal in Jersey City. Was a good councilman for 8 years, did a lot of good things. And then in 2013, I decided to run a race very similar that I'm running right now. So I'm going to run for mayor, all my chips in the middle, policy, substance, and focused on grassroots. Now, when I tell you that everybody of substance in New Jersey political system was against me, that's not even doing justice to what that race was like. Of course, the entire Hudson County organization was against me. Cory Booker felt the need to weigh in on it. Mayor Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York City at the time, felt the need to cut a commercial on behalf of the incumbent. It was one of two races in the country, that then sitting President Barack Obama felt the need to engage directly. It was Rahm Emanuel for the mayor of Chicago and Jeremiah Healy, the incumbent mayor of Jersey City. And I won that race and two others after that. It was the first three-term elected mayor of Jersey City in 70 years. Thank you. Thanks. Now look, I tell you that story because this race is very similar to that race in many ways. Jersey City over the last 12 years has been the single best Renaissance story in New Jersey and probably in the country. We have punched above our weight and been the state leaders on every economic development policy, every social service policy, every environmental justice policy. I mean, you name it. The laboratory of change with the things that Phil Murphy talks about that he's proud of, the place that it first started when it was uncomfortable to do was Jersey City. Minimum wage, paid sick leave, decriminalization of marijuana. I mean, I could go on all day. Because we're willing to push into a place that is uncomfortable. And when people tell me that of course Jersey City would have seen this Renaissance, because Jersey City is 3 miles from New York City, I always say the same thing. I say Jersey City has been 3 miles from New York City for 250 years, okay? And the last 10 years have been different. A year and a half ago, I said I was gonna run for governor. And very similar to this election, I said that I'm gonna push all my chips in the middle because I believe that New Jersey really needs some structural change in a big way. Now, people said, you're starting too early. Why would you do that? It's not traditional. How are you gonna stay relevant? I heard it all. And I said that there were two reasons I was starting early. The first was that if we were gonna build something that was substantive on policy and detail-oriented, it takes time to do that properly. I'll give you an example on that. Most candidates, and I would urge you to go to their websites, okay? If you talk about how a candidate positions something, they speak in generalities. They don't give you specifics because there's a risk every time they say something. So if they say, what's your policing plan? We want to hire more police is the answer. What's your school education plan? We need to have better schools is the answer. It's vague. That's how most people approach it. We don't do it that way. If you go to our website, you would see that every month we rolled out a different part. Our housing plan is 18 pages. Our transportation plan is 20 pages. Every one of them is, here's what I learned in Jersey City, here's what I accomplished, and here's what I know I can do as governor if you give me the opportunity, without a federal government that's helpful. And we would do these Zoom calls, one per month. 500 people would show up on this Zoom to talk about transportation issues or the environment or sustainability. And I realized I was onto something, growing something that is different. The other reason I started early was because we wanted to build a grassroots organization that wasn't relying on these political machines. And if you're going to do that, it takes time. You cannot do that in 6 months. Today, by far, we have the largest volunteer network of anybody. And we talk in these conversations, these meet and greets. Yesterday I was tomorrow I'm in Violin. Yesterday I was in LBI. Last week I was in Tenafly, TNEC. I mean, 100, 150 people in a room like this, and we talk about tough things. They'll ask me questions that are uncomfortable, and I will tell them direct answers because I want people to know that if you elect me governor, these are the reasons, things that I will accomplish and how I will do it. I think in order to move New Jersey forward, you deserve the specifics of how one is going to accomplish changing the state. Otherwise, people will not come out to vote. Our campaign is different in a way that there is no fallback position for me. Every single person up there, sorry, Senator, has created a position where they will fall back and stay in political office if they lose this election. I want you to think about that for a second. You have two congresspeople, no offense, I say it wherever I am. You have two congresspeople that told you they wanted to serve you in Congress. They told you this is the moment to fight Donald Trump, which it is. They took your money. They asked you to volunteer. And then a week later, they told you, now that I got this safe seat, just kidding, I really want to be the governor, okay? It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. I am the only candidate that doesn't have a fallback position. I could run for mayor, and I probably would win. Maybe I'd win. But I've been very clear that that's not my aspirations, because as we talk about policy in 2 minutes, you're going to see that I believe what I am telling you on transportation and housing and how we are going to get from A to Z, and there's no fallback position. All my chips are in the middle, because I believe that if you are going to change New Jersey, it takes conviction and a know-how on how to do this. I'm going to say one last thing before I go back to you, okay? The most important qualification, I'm going to say this again and again and again. We all have terrific bios. And somebody could say, I was a Navy pilot. I'll tell you I was a Marine. One will say I'm a principal. I'm a union leader. Everybody has a bio that's compelling, okay? But the most important character trait or experience to be the governor of New Jersey is being a mayor. If you are going to drive down costs, it is understanding executive experience. Look, New Jersey has more municipalities, 500, 550 municipalities. We have more school districts than municipalities. Those layers of government matter. Understanding the connectivity of how Trenton interacts with municipal government, with unfunded mandates, with costs, how that impacts you on your affordability conversation is an experience that you only know if you live it as a mayor. I'm going to say that again and again, and you will hear me, and I'm going to give you specific examples on that. If you don't believe me, it's possible. Ask yourself about the last 8 years. Ask yourself. Say the last 8 years you had Phil Murphy, good guy. He came from being the ambassador to Germany and didn't have experience on local government. I could tell you that when Trenton says to us, clean up your lead pipes throughout New Jersey, requirement to do it in 3 years, every municipality, no money follows it, costs us $10 million. When they say that you have to have 4 officers for Megan's Law, you pay for that. When they say every municipality has to do XYZ around STD testing, no money. When they say that you got to build 500 more affordable housing units but don't give you money for infrastructure, those are things that a mayor knows firsthand. Now, Phil Murphy came from being an ambassador. 8 years before that, Chris Christie came from being a U.S. attorney, didn't really know municipal government the same way. And 4 years before that, John Corzine came from being a United States senator, also no experience in municipal government. I am telling you that the gap that exists with understanding what the solutions are because you have local home rule in New Jersey. That means that mayors have a disproportionate amount of influence. And if you don't understand the connectivity between Trenton and the municipality, it is a gap that you will never be able to fix your affordability, your transportation, your housing, your sustainability issues, because you need to understand how to move those mayors. It's as simple as that. So with that, being that thank you. This is the first forum where I don't have a clock in front of me, so I'm just gonna take my time. So with that, thank you for coming out today and look forward to it. Thank you. Do you want to open up to questions and just go, yeah, let's do it that way.
Okay. I have a mic here so that, okay, our first question.
Sorry it takes so long. Sorry it takes so long.
Former councilman. Question for both candidates. What makes you the candidate to beat the presumptive Republican candidate, Jack Chittenden?
You want to go first? You go first.
I just spoke for 10 minutes.
Sure. I mean, hopefully this one will work. This
Go
is part
for
of
it.
the
Here.
trick. I thought this wasn't
Here.
Hudson County. They gave me the mic. It doesn't
Here you
work.
go. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go.
Just share the one, otherwise.
Well, yeah.
Because I don't believe it to be entirely true. Rodney Frillinghuysen dropped out of the race. He never saw it through till the end. She had a weak opposition actually in the general election. 2 years later, because of her relationship, I'm going to correct that, because of her relationship with the political bosses in Essex and throughout the state of New Jersey, they changed the congressional districts to gerrymander it for more Democrats in her district at the expense of Tom Malinowski. That is a fact in the history of New Jersey, okay? So I want to just take that back for a second. I want to really clarify why and how we need to win in November, because not all the candidates can win, okay? And I actually disagree on her viability, but it's not only hers, okay? Let me take a step back and say, when people tell you that New Jersey is a purple state, that's what they say now, right? We're trending purple. Look at the last election. I push back on that because if you think about the history a little bit of elections in New Jersey, going back to 2008, 2009, it shows you a different story if you look at it in isolation. You're gonna say, like, what does this guy mean? Crazy. Well, if you go back to 2009, for a second, bear with me, you had John Corzine running against Chris Christie. You remember that gubernatorial race, right? And as I remember it, and some of you will probably agree with this, you will have John Corzine, who was not a gifted communicator at all, okay? And a month before the election, he actually reintroduced the Turnpike privatization plan, that crazy plan that he had where tolls were going to go up a huge amount of dollars, and there was huge backlash, if you remember that. And at the same time, he was running against Chris Christie, who is a gifted communicator. Regardless of what you think about his policies, he's a good communicator, okay? And he had indicted most of the Democratic institution the previous 2 or 3 years, so they were weakened. And the ones he didn't indict, he had side deals with, if you remember, okay? And with all of those advantages, Chris Christie barely beat John Corzine, barely. You fast forward, you had Democrats register, no question about it, over the Obama years. 2021 comes up, okay? That's what people talk about. They talk about Phil Murphy, 2021, that Jack Ciattarelli almost beat him. It's true. Well, let's take a look at that for a second, okay? Virginia and New Jersey are always the same, okay? They're the two gubernatorial elections after the presidential year, and they always go counter to whoever the president is. In Virginia, you had Youngkin against McAuliffe, but an incumbent governor, and Youngkin closed 30 points as the Republican and became the governor. In New Jersey, despite the fact that Phil Murphy introduced a month before the plastic bag ban went into effect before the election, you had a lot of conversations around the LGBTQ community in education a month before the election. With all of those things, and I say this, I've never met a die-hard worker for Phil Murphy. I met people who like him, but nobody who's like a warrior for him. And I say that because with all of those headwinds, Phil Murphy still won. Squeaked it out, but he still won. it suggests that if you have a candidate, you are talking about a ceiling and not a floor for Jack Ciattarelli. Fast forward to 2024, last year. People point to the election with Kamala and Trump. Okay, if you were to listen to Steve Kornacki, he would say, look at Passaic County. Passaic County trended red. That is a canary in the coal mine. I would say I disagree. If you think about Passaic County, you would know that Patterson has the largest Palestinian community in the state of New Jersey, okay? And if you think about Kamala and the Democrats, where they stand or stood on that specific issue and other issues, they were no conviction, so people sat it out there. If you think about healthcare, if you think about fracking, if you think about the Middle East, it was hard to peg where the Democrats stood on a lot of these issues, and I say that as a core supporter. When they point to Hudson County, where I live, they say, look, Hudson County overperformed for Trump. Hudson County has a huge Latino community that voted based on the immigration issue and some family values issues that would not translate into a gubernatorial election. So I don't subscribe to the fact that you are at risk and you need to elect a moderate or a Republican light. I will tell you the opposite, okay? If we nominate a Republican light, somebody close to the middle, because you think that that is acceptable, you will have those 800,000 people that are the advantage that we have not come out to vote. You need somebody that is specific on details, that is clear in what they say, that will outline what and why and how they will change New Jersey. Because that is the only reason, if you are clear, that somebody will come out and say, yes, I believe this person will change New Jersey Transit and this is how they will do that. Otherwise, people won't come out and you will have that same outcome. I am unique in a lane. I told you that right out of the gate, okay? It's untested. I believe it will work, but it is unique. And I'm telling you that it puts me in a position that is unique to win in November, because the biggest criticism that the Republicans are going to say of the nominee that you elect here or nominate is, what are they going to say? What is the criticism they're going to say? They're going to say, this person is 4 more years of Phil Murphy. That's what they're going to say. Now, Democrats like Phil Murphy. Phil Murphy has done a good job on a lot of things. I'm not going to take that away from him. But when you think about energy prices and taxes and the way people feel and independence, a criticism that is 4 more years of Phil Murphy is a deadly thing. True. Now, if you are surrounded by the same consultants, the same organizations, the same political structure that got Phil Murphy elected and has propped up Phil Murphy, I don't care what your bio is. You are not going to be able to walk away from the narrative 4 more years of Phil Murphy. You need some separation there, and you need details on how and why you are going to inspire people to come out. And I think I'm uniquely situated to be able to do that. Okay, thanks. So.
This question is for the senator. As you pointed out, Mike Sherrill was uniquely qualified to turn her district blue. What is the game plan, should she be elected to the gubernatorial office, to maintain that as a blue seat in this challenging time?
Well, I think that's
The first place in New Jersey that enacted the plastic bag ban was Jersey City. That is a fact. That is a fact. So I am not, so it goes back to what I said earlier, but I am not a critic of it. I just said it was headwinds for Phil Murphy in that.
Yeah, and thanks. And you know what, I was so happy to hear you say positive things about Phil Murphy. Because truth be told, you know, again, are the iron workers standing, sorry, are the iron workers standing next to him and loving him and hugging him? Why would they? He's a Red Sox fan, right? But at the end of the day, what he did, just think of environmental justice. Think of the other environmental, you know, the other types of environmental things. We talked about the plastic bag ban. Think about the budget. Think about the fact that we fully funded the pension, that we fully funded the schools, and we did it by our bond rating going up 6 times, and we got a big rainy day fund. So he did an incredible job standing for our values, making our reproductive freedom. So it makes me sad, and I'm so glad to hear you, Steve, when some of the candidates want to shy away from Phil Murphy. They should be so fortunate to be as good, maybe even better than he was. That's just my view. As it relates to that district, they're all lining up like planes at Teterboro Democrats. There are some very, very capable Democratic candidates that are in line that will be very formidable. I have no doubt, especially with the district becoming a little more blue now than it ever was. that will keep that safe.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Kay from Altoona. We live in the most congested state in the union, pretty much, I'm pretty sure. And our transportation is awful, our housing is awful, and we've destroyed our environment in massive urban sprawl. Sorry to say, Jersey City looks like a hot mess to me when I drive through with all of that building and stuff, and those prices are not affordable. I have kids in their 20s who may live in my house until I die and take it over because they can't afford to live anywhere else. And in fact, my 26-year-old texted me and said, ask them how I'm gonna live anywhere and how I can afford anything. And how are they gonna build generational wealth if they spend it all on rent and can never
Yep.
save enough to build it in hand to mouth because they're not getting jobs that paying and healthcare is going up and all of this.
Yeah.
So in this most congested state of ours,
Yep.
we need to look at things in a holistic way.
Yes.
Transportation matters, along with housing, along with environmental preserves. In our town, we fought a hard battle. They are about to chop down over 300 trees with a vernal pond, and we fought
You wanna
so
go first?
hard. We showed up, we did all sorts of stuff, and all the Republicans in town tell us,
Can I get a piece of
well,
paper?
let's vote for a Republican mayor, and they'll solve all of this because the whole COA and number of beds you need and all of this stuff, and nobody can afford to buy private property and convert it. So you have to wait for a developer to come in, tear down all the trees, and then build senior homes, like there's 10 million being built all over the place, and when they're all sitting vacant at some point, what are we gonna do? And no one can afford to put their parents there either. So it's a holistic thing that's going on, and everyone wants to segregate these little issues together, but they all work together. And my kids take public transportation every day in and out of the city. And we don't even have parking lots near there unless you live in that town to get on that bus. And I voted for Gottheimer because he promised he'd run on public transportation, and I continue to write him regularly. And the trains have gotten horrific and worse. And the buses, I have to be late for work every day because I have to drop them off at work, drop them off to get to their bus to work. So it's a holistic thing. What are you gonna do? And don't make the rest of the state look like Jersey City where it's so overcongested.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not offended by that. I got thick skin. Let me say this. I love Jersey City. Okay, I love it. I raised my family there. But that said, I'm sensitive to the fact in our housing plan that you don't want to live in Jersey City, and I'm conscious of that. And I think a lot about how are we going to increase housing specific for you and transportation in a way that works for the entire region. And I do talk about this a lot. I'm going to start with transportation because the way I heard it is that you really touched on three things. Transportation, number one, your core issue. Then housing, because that actually works with transportation. And then a little bit about the environment as well you touched on, right? Did I get that somewhat right? Yes, okay, I gotcha. Okay, let me start on transportation, and I'm gonna tell you that I have more experience on this than not only any gubernatorial candidate, than probably most elected officials in the state of New Jersey. In Jersey City, the largest microtransit system in the country now was started by us to serve underserved areas, a partnership with VIA. We've done 2.5 million rides since we started it. We built the largest bike share program, protected bike lanes, first on Vision Zero. We're in the ferry business now, unfortunately, but we are. I know a thing or two about this. I'm going to tell you specifically what I'm going to do as governor that will change your transportation feelings, sentiment, and routes almost immediately, okay? Couple things. The first is last year, Phil Murphy touts the fact that he has a dedicated revenue source for the first time going to New Jersey Transit. It's a business tax on corporations that do $10 million plus in revenue, and there's a dedicated revenue on top of that that goes towards New Jersey Transit. The genesis of that idea, and it's not me telling you this, it's New Jersey Policy Perspective, which is a left-leaning think tank. The genesis of that idea was my policy paper a year early on transportation. At the time, it was panned by the Senate President and the governor, and I said, eventually, absent another solution, you will come around to see why this works. And they did. However, they did it not how I would do it, fairly that it needs to be fixed, and it would be the first thing that I do. What's the problem with it? The problem is that they did it only 5 years is they implemented it in 4. So it's traditional on how Trenton operates. You don't solve the problem. They put a Band-Aid for 5 years. Beyond the 5-year issue, the larger problem is that you cannot bond or capitalize against a 5-year revenue because it's not long-term enough in order to float a bond against it. And you need to bond against that in order to modernize, clean, make your station safer, to improve how people feel about the transportation infrastructure. So we would fix that immediately. The second thing, I stand alone with regards to the largest infrastructure project that you all pay. I pay for it too, but the largest infrastructure project in New Jersey right now is a $12 billion, with a B, turnpike widening project that happens to be in Hudson County, going through Jersey City. Now, originally, when the state said that they were doing this, it was to alleviate congestion and widen the turnpike going into the Holland Tunnel. I pushed back because it didn't make a lot of sense, and I want to tell you why it didn't make a lot of sense, and I continue to think it's a stupid idea. Because it doesn't matter if you widen the turnpike to be 46 lanes. The Holland Tunnel is still 2 lanes, okay? So you still have that bottleneck. I'm very open that I will cancel that and reappropriate those dollars to light rail, particularly the Bergen extension on the Hudson-Bergen line, and your funding source is already allocated there. So I'm very open. I stand alone on that. The third thing I would tell you is around your buses. Okay, you touched on that a little bit earlier, but your buses have been privatized. New Jersey Transit 20 years ago privatized most of their bus routes. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because government doesn't make money on transportation anywhere in the world. It's an understood thing. We lose money, actually, but there's a lot of benefits. Economic development happens, mobility, quality of life. All of these things are a byproduct of transportation, but we don't make money off it. That's understood. When New Jersey Transit made the decision 20 years ago to privatize that, a private vendor has a different set of responsibilities. They have to make money on that route. So when you don't have the ridership that you initially anticipate, they make decisions that are counter to your interest. They maybe don't clean the buses as frequently, maybe maintenance not as frequently, maybe lengthen the time between pickups. And that is a problem. You need to bring those bus routes back into New Jersey Transit in order to make the bus system more efficient, in order to move people around. Those 3 things right out of the gate. I mean, there's probably 10 other things that I outlined that I would do, but those are specifics. On housing, okay? Let's talk about housing for a second. Jersey City is an expensive place to live, despite the fact that we have built more affordable housing than anybody in the state of New Jersey, including the largest mixed income housing project in the northeast part of the United States of America is in Jersey City, started under our administration. It is 8,000 units on the west side of Jersey City, of which 35% are affordable, okay? So we have leaned into this hard, but your point is valid. Absent a regional plan that really speaks to housing, one municipality or 2 municipalities can never do it alone. Our housing plan speaks to a couple things that are specific. First, the NIMBYs, well, let me take a step back further. When Republicans say that they will alleviate your obligation around affordable housing, and they're gonna put it back into Camden and Jersey City and Newark and all of those things, that's their talking point. I hear Jack Ciattarelli say that all the time. It is a lie, because there are 40 years of case law that says that will never happen. Every municipality has an obligation, and it is impossible to alleviate that for you. There are things that we can do to make it easier for you, but we can never alleviate your responsibility. I testified at the bill that they just passed because Jersey City, as an example, Montclair, Hoboken don't participate in your requirements around housing. So our numbers, I just told you, we have an 8,000 unit development. If that counted towards the obligations of the state, which it doesn't today, it would alleviate pressure elsewhere. Number 1, I think it should. Number 2, NIMBYs control the entire dialogue around housing, not in my backyard, right? The squeaky wheel, the people that say, I do not want housing in my area. Now, Trenton can change that. How does Trenton change that? First, most people don't know where their municipality is with regards to their obligation. So you all have an obligation. Often your mayor fights it, and it costs you millions of dollars, but people don't know about that. Creating transparency around where your municipality is and what the carrot and the stick associated with that is would change the dialogue on how people interact with that. The second part is that, and I think that Phil should be doing better at this, this is a gap in how he leads, is that the carrot and the stick driving at an agenda is important. If housing construction is important, you need to be rewarding those mayors and municipalities that are fulfilling that obligation. When a mayor says that I need more resources for schools, for sewers, for streets, because you're making me do these additional things, it is a fair argument. We shouldn't be dismissive of that. We do need to help those that are complying, and today that doesn't happen at all. Third, today it's an 80-20 ratio, right? So if you have a 20 units obligation, the developer is allowed, because of economics, to build 80 units, so your town absorbs 100 additional units. And in a place like Closter, for example, they would say, well, we can't handle 200, 300. That's not the housing stock that we have here. It's a fair criticism. How do you solve that? Is you have a deeper subsidy from the state so that you're at a 50-50, as an example. If you have a deeper subsidy, then it's 20 and 20. So you're building 40 units instead of 100 units. And you're driving down the numbers, which is more acceptable to people. Our housing plan is detailed. I mean, I saw somebody yawn back there, so I'm going to stop. But on the environment, I just want to say one other thing, okay? There is one candidate out of the 6 of us that has a sustainability and environmental policy. Put aside all the advocacy groups and endorsements and the politics around that, because that is a lot of who knows who. Read the websites and you will see there's one person that has detailed policy and track record around environment and sustainability. It's me. And the reason is because I've leaned into this very hard. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old at home. I think a lot about, that's why I'm so happy to be here, by the way. I think a lot about what the world's going to be like for them. And I talk that in a world where you have a president that doesn't believe in climate change, every single candidate up here says the same thing. They say, we got to fight, we got to fight, we got to fight. Yeah, that's true. But you also got to be smart. So you have a president that doesn't believe in climate change, that you're not going to have money. So how do you push a climate change conversation in the next 3 or 4 years? What do we focus on is what I say most often in order to continue making us more sustainable in a world where the federal government doesn't help. So what did I say? I said, first, let's talk about open space preservation. Big priority for me. The state controls that ultimately, land acquisition. I was the first, Mikey copied me, with regards to a moratorium on warehouses. I said that these large warehouses that take up surfaces and make flooding worse in the surrounding areas, we need a stronger stand on that. The DEP is not staffed. It's 800 people understaffed. If it's a priority for us and you're going to move things through that, you need to step in there. Green Acres funding. I mean, I'm a mayor. I know how these things work with regards to overlap of Green Acres funding and the gaps on that. I think there's more that we can do to help municipalities acquire open space. So yes, they are all linked to what things that you said. I think I'm uniquely situated to tell you this is how I'm going to go from here to here in a way that probably or hopefully you can understand that, okay, that kind of makes a little bit of sense what he's saying. It's not a hard thing to cancel the turnpike. It's happened in other states, and you could reallocate that money and go elsewhere. That's what I'm driving at here. I'm going to turn over to Senator here.
Thank you, Mayor. When you mentioned your 2 beautiful kids, I made
Three.
you think of
Three.
I'm sorry, 3 beautiful children. I made you think of something to the extent of why Mikey's not here. Now, where one of the blessings you have from all the vicissitudes of being the mayor of Jersey City, it's not so easy, is that you live in town where your children are, so you get to see them a lot. As it relates to Congresswoman Cheryl, she's in Washington. You were mentioning earlier that the acting session, and as you can imagine, spent a lot of time there. And that's where she is tonight. She's 4 children, one of whom is on the way to the Naval Academy, but 2 of them are pretty young, and she had an obligation, and who she is. This had nothing to do with politics or not being here, or she wouldn't have sent the representative. So I know that you all respect that. Mayor mentioned a couple things. I know he was teasing, saying that Mikey, stole the idea from the warehouses. You weren't a moratorium, but hers is different. She isn't about a moratorium. She's about a pause. She's about a pause as it relates to putting together a regional plan to make sure that communities that are already put upon don't end up with a warehouse right on their border where all of the truck traffic and otherwise, will not be distributed in an equitable way. But you mentioned the turnpike before. Do you realize not every truck goes into New York City? They're going the opposite way. Bayonne is a major port, the lifeblood, part of the economic viability of the state. That's why Congressman Sherrill thinks that it's important to move forward with the turnpike expansion, but not because she's not going to deal with transportation. Now, well, we all have families, right? Mikey has an embedded constituent in the form of her husband, who goes to New York every day on New Jersey Transit. Her and I have spoken, so she hears it when there's issues. And New Jersey Transit, and it's got to be light rail, and it's got to be South Jersey, it shouldn't just be North Jersey Transit, so to speak. But as it relates to the kind of things at New Jersey Transit, they need to be a little more creative. When her and I spoke about this, the only commuter rail that ever made money in the history of this country happened during World War II. And that was only because the United States was paying to move troops all around to get them ready to ship out. So if we care about public transportation, it's got to come with public supports. Who knows what we're going to get out of the federal government for the next number of years? That's got to be a priority. And that's why, and the mayor deserves the credit, if it was his paper on the corporate business tax being a piece of what would fund New Jersey Transit, Mikey's taken the next step and said that should be imbued in the Constitution. Because every year, come July 1st, when we pass a budget, unless something is imbued in our Constitution, it's open game. So that's her position in that regard. You asked such a good question, and so many. And I was a mayor for 12 years myself. And I look at Jersey City, and I'm sorry that your question was about, oh, it looks terrible, or what have you. But I mean, that's kind of what you want. You want smart growth, but that's what you want as a mayor, right? To bring wealth and prosperity. You gotta watch out for the people that are the have-nots and they don't get thrown out. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, but at the end of the day, with all this success, Jersey City is the second to New York, the most expensive place to live in the state. So what are we going to do about housing affordability? This is why we have to think outside the box. Mikey Sherrill is talking about making modular a part of when, now that the legislature has done a little better in streamlining these processes and keeping this out of the courts and having towns that should build their fair share, doing it quicker, doing it in a way modular is greener, it's less expensive, it's faster, it'll take advantage of the dearth of labor. So there are a number of ideas that she's thought through to deal with the myriad of issues that you raise. And it does all come down to affordability. I have 3 daughters that are adults myself, and God knows I understand the challenges they and their friends have. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They come out of college with these floors. And then you add that obligation to what they need to do as it relates to affording a down payment and a home, considering just as our population grows, that there's just not enough places to live. And you worry about that. I know Mikey's thoughtfully considering ADUs, alternate dwelling units, where if you do have a home from a perspective like Princeton does, and 3 or 4 other communities.
Jersey City.
Where if you have a lot, you could put a carriage home on the back, maybe where your parents are going to live, or maybe where your teenagers are going to live and not have to be in your house. Maybe where you might make $1 or $2 extra income to pay those property taxes. That's something that's on her agenda. So with that, again, the 2 of us can continue on each and every point because there was so much you asked in your question. But I hope that was informational and look forward to some more questions.
Hi, thanks for being here. I'd like to know your position on the reproductive freedom and health equity bill, and in order to convert Governor Murphy's executive order and codify it into law.
Can you go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to switch up the order, and since this isn't me, I could talk a long time about this. I want to make sure I'm being true to the Congresswoman and what she's done and what she feels. And as you can appreciate, she has full-throated support for reproductive freedom in our state. I think that any of us that would be up here, when I say us, candidates, that would be a given, and it should be a given for everyone, truth be told. the old adage about if a man could get pregnant, this wouldn't be an issue. That's the truth. But speaking about getting pregnant, a big part of what Mikey's view that's a part of reproductive freedom is infertility. We talked about our kids before as to, I've got daughters, I'm blessed, a couple grandkids for my 30-something-year-old daughter. But the kids now get married a lot later than they used to. And that environment that we're talking about, there's factors that are probably things that we haven't yet figured out as to impacting it, but infertility is a big deal. And so, in her view, reproductive freedom is no less having freedom of choice as to what a woman's going to do with her body. Will be a big part of what her vision for the state in that regard. So, I mean, the last piece that I mentioned about our Constitution before, Mikey's done a lot of work in Congress as it relates to, dealing with most of this, but this needs to be imbued in our Constitution in the state of New Jersey. And the first thing she'll do is move the legislature for a constitutional amendment.
So, first of all, we're in agreement on that. And Jersey City has an extensive track record on partnerships with Planned Parenthood, unique partnerships, particularly in our WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, servicing the poorest and immigrant community in Jersey City, which is one of the largest WICs in the state of New Jersey. We have a partnership with Planned Parenthood around family planning. And is it a unique model? And we could replicate that broadly. I do believe, and I do err on the side of the constitutional amendment to protect women's reproductive rights. What a lot of advocates, I will say this, what a lot of advocates do caution around that, and I think it's an important talking point, and I listen around this, is that in other states where you have tried to codify this, the outcome has been that it has gotten watered down through the process. And today, New Jersey has amongst the strongest laws in the country. And so we need to be mindful on how we approach that and careful from an executive standpoint. So that's just a data point around that. I think the governor has been a leader around this, stockpiling drugs, advocating, and I think I would continue that as most of us sitting up here would come 2026. Thank you.
Which I forgot to mention, is the fact that New Jersey, with the executive order, is a safe haven for gender-affirming healthcare. And you guys were just limiting your conversation to women's reproductive rights.
Yep.
You could comment on the trans
Yes. This is a place me and the Congresswoman actually disagree, or she's been less vocal on. I speak openly and often about the legislation that you are referencing, and that in a time that we talk about standing up to Trump, right, and the most vulnerable communities in New Jersey, that I think often as advocates in the state, we focus our attention on our federal representatives. And if you take a step back and you think about the fact that here in New Jersey, you have a totally different construct than you did. You have a Republican Senate, Republican House, and Republican President. Here you have Democrats across the board. And I say that there are things that we should be doing beyond just talking, specifically when I'm going to get to gender identity in a second. I talk about Matt Plakett and the AG. I stand alone in the sense that he has been a state leader and a national leader pushing back against Trump's advocacy with regards to repealing laws and opportunities for states. He's been a leader nationally on that. And I think that it's very important to continuity, to give him the opportunity to stay. I stand alone on that I would allow him the opportunity to stay, which is different because most of the other candidates have the AG pre-selected by those political bosses before they step into office. That is the way it has worked historically. Matt Plakett is not my personal friend, but he has done a good job, and in this moment in time, he deserves the opportunity to stay to push back against Trump. Secondly, I do say often that with regards to pushing back on Trump beyond just rhetoric, because we all say the same thing. Phil Murphy has grown the surplus down in trend to $6 billion. And that's something that the senator mentioned earlier. It's something that he touts. But in this moment in time, we should be drawing down on that surplus in order to cover the gaps in Medicaid and universities to make sure that we are protecting the most vulnerable communities. With regards to gender identity and the trans community in particular, the Medicaid conversation around them is often a life and death conversation. It is a community that has higher suicide rates, higher drug use rates, is particularly vulnerable, and has been a punching bag for Trump for the last year. So should you cut opportunities around Medicaid and healthcare, you will only see that community in a worse and worse predicament. It leads me to the third part of this, that we often focus on the federal, and we should be holding our state legislature accountable and our governor. The Immigrant Trust Act, women's reproductive rights, gender identity. The first line of defense is Trenton and the governor, and we do not hold them accountable enough to put things up for a vote to see who stands with us. And that is something that the governor should be leading on, and I don't think happens today. Today, okay, there was conversations around the trans community with regards to military families, and I criticized the Congresswoman because she sacrificed the trans community in her vote around that, and it was unacceptable. Today, 82 members of Congress in the Democrats signed a letter in regards to passports and gender identity. Neither of the two Congress people running for governor put their name on that. I think that's a mistake. With regards to the trans community, because you specifically asked about it, Jersey City has the highest rating on every survey with regards to the LGBTQ community. We have the largest LGBTQ community in the state of New Jersey. In 2017, prior to this entire conversation, there was one mayor, happens to be me, that extended our healthcare coverage to cover the trans community that are our employees within city government. We have 3 employees that are a part of the trans community. And I went and said, we will meet them and see them where they are because it is the right thing to do. So in this moment, in 2025, I have an extensive track record that I would never walk away from. And I think going back to full circle, what I said earlier is that if you shy away from issues like this, if you say, I am not going to touch the immigrant conversation or the trans conversation or any of these, you will lose in November. It is a losing formula because Democrats need to know that you will fight for them and not sacrifice them. And that is the only way that you will get a turnout in November. And that's why this primary is particularly important.
Mayor, thank you. You know, I've had this discussion with the Congresswoman, and you probably all recognize this from a big picture, right? As soon as marriage equality is same-sex marriage became mainstream and accepted, and political parties aside, even religious aside, people recognize this is how their children, their grandchildren felt and became accepted. The right wing, they did a boogeyman, right? So the boogeyman became the transgender community. And that's what, and I don't want to sit here and get into a political discussion like it's MSNBC of what might have meant something in the presidential election and what they turned into that, and a non-issue about women or men playing in women's sports, and it's ridiculousness. And I can just tell you this unequivocally, and I want to respond for Mikey. I can't speak to the passport ID. It might be because she's with her family, just logistically wasn't there to sign. I don't know that, but that will be for her to answer. I do know, as it relates to the National Defense Authorization Act, she was a sponsor and worked on that literally for years. The primary focus of that was to pay soldiers for the first time who had to take food stamps in order to survive while they served our country. And at the last moment, Johnson, the speaker, put in a small rider that said, well, transgender service members' children can't use funds to transition. And yep, she voted for it. But you know what the alternative was? For all those soldiers not to get the pay raise that they much deserved, and to turn it over to a trifecta Republican president in Congress who hasn't shown much love to the military, and particularly the veterans. So that was a decision that she made. He stands behind it. But that's the reason. It certainly isn't because of any lack of support for the transgender community. As a matter of fact, she's been a member of the Equality Caucus since her first term in Congress. She championed the Equality Act in Congress that dealt with LGBT rights. She helped successfully pass the Respect for Marriage Act, as opposed to the Defense of Marriage Act, which was put forward by the Republicans and well could have been the basis for our Supreme Court to have dealt with marriage equality. And she made certain and viewed in the law in Congress at this point is a law that does just the opposite. So she's very proud of that track record and will continue. And I'm not politically smart enough, Steve, to know if you're right or wrong, or Mayor, sorry, on whether or not making this a major issue in the upcoming election will carry the day or inspire people to vote. I'll leave people more politically astute than I to make that decision. But don't ever question what Mikey's commitment is on that topic.
Can I say, let me just say one thing, because this is a conversation, and I disagree with that. I'm going to tell you why, okay? Because her vote was not the deciding vote, okay? It wasn't that if she didn't vote, the legislation wouldn't pass, okay? That wasn't the conversation down there. The conversation was, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because polling shows that this is a tough conversation to have around the trans community. And certain members in the moderate lane throughout the country decided to sacrifice the trans community because of the politics around that. To say that somebody was a deciding vote, just look up the numbers, Google it when you leave here. It would have passed without a Democratic vote. It is the same thing with regards to ICE and the Immigrant Trust Act and Lake and Riley. Same exact thing. Same exact thing. We could look back and say, well, this is the reason, this is not the reason. But I go back to what I'm saying, that if you're not willing to articulate why and how you will stand up and be different than the people on the other side, you will not have young people come out and vote. There is a reason why the College Democrats of America, we all solicited their support. They chose me. There is a reason why. Those people need to come out. If those people are not voting, we are not going to be successful. And you need to meet them where they are at. You need to tell them how you will make the state more livable for them, not in platitudes, in a way that they believe it, because they could wrap their head around the fact, I see that you are going to get there. It's a big difference between me and not just her, but every other candidate up here. And I hope when you leave here today, you spend some time on our website to explore this, because it is a big difference. Yeah.
We're going to call this a fast round, because we want to get in a couple more questions before we wrap it up. So if you gentlemen would just try and keep your
Yes.
answers succinct, so we can get a couple more questions.
Hi, so first of all, I'd like to thank both of you for coming. And I was very excited when I saw this forum was going to happen, and I'm very disappointed that, not that it's the two of you, but I'm disappointed that the others could not show
At least
up.
disappointed in one of us.
Yeah, right. That's all good.
Hi, I'm Dolores Whitco. I'm from originally Presskill, Closter, and now I live in Westwood, and I'm running for county commissioner. It's Mayor Fulop. My union president, who Steve knows very well, Susan Cleary, has said, this is what democracy looks like. Well, this is what democracy looks like, but from up there, except for the two of you, it doesn't. So I have, my daughter is a teacher. She has a lot of teacher friends. So I asked a teacher from a local district to ask some teachers for questions to ask Mr. Spiller, but obviously we can't ask him that. So I'm going to ask the two of these quick questions. How do you see the role of teachers' unions in shaping education policy? And if Linda McMahon makes big changes to the U.S. Department of Education, how will you make sure New Jersey schools don't suffer from funding cuts or policy changes?
You want to go first, or? I just spoke, so I'm trying.
It's all good. I think I'm in your spot. Yeah, thanks. Mikey's grandfather wasn't a teacher, but he was a part of the United Auto Workers. And that's imbued in her self as it relates to the unions and supporting unions. That's what created the middle class in this country, probably what got us away from the prosperity that we all share together, and something that we have to focus on, and she supports. And the NJEA is a big part of that. I wish I could tell you what to predict is going to come out of Linda McMahon, other than chaos from the WW. And we're laughing, but it's serious. It's serious as it relates to all the resources the funding, the direction. And look, that's why it's so important that we elect a Democratic governor with our principles that's going to have to fill in those gaps for at least the next couple of years, if not 4. So you said to keep it short, and I will, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I'm going to keep it short as well. I agree with what the senator said. I think unions play a vital role in shaping policy and need to be at the table. I mean, teachers are in the classroom. They have a perspective that's important, and we can't be dismissive of that. With regards to federal cuts, I think having a governor that understands the nuances of state government is really important. Having strong leadership in departments and commissioners to advocate and push back, very, very important. And I think I have a track record in Jersey City and a lot of scars because we have pushed for a lot of things that are outside the norm. And I think now more than ever is a moment in time where those skill sets are important.
If you guys can answer it in 2 seconds.
Yeah, sure. Sure. That was a quick one.
Okay, Denise.
Hi.
We could repeat the question. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Denise. I am a Westwood resident, and I have a follow-up question regarding reproductive rights. I'm a lawyer in New York, and I have seen Democratic governors with Democratic legislatures, for reasons that are beyond me, appoint conservative judges in New York to the appellate courts, seemingly to horse trade and get something from their Republican counterparts. That concerns me. I'd like to know whether you can commit to making whether you can commit to making a commitment to respect for New Jersey precedent regarding reproductive rights, birth control, abortion access, and IVF. Can you make that a litmus test for any judicial appointee?
Yeah.
You want to answer that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. As you probably know, Counselor, New Jersey is different than New York as it relates to the appellate division. And I think it's a good difference. Our Supreme Court Justice is the sole person who puts appellate judges in place. That takes the politics out of it. So that horse trading that goes along in New York doesn't happen in New Jersey. It's done on merit. As it relates to our Supreme Court, although it's not written in here, the tradition is Republican, Democrat, and Independent. I can guarantee you that Mikey Cheryl, a Democrat that she gets to appoint, that will be a litmus test. I can guarantee you any Independent that she has an opportunity to appoint, that will be the litmus test. As it relates to the Republican, I can only tell you that presumptively that if we continue our Democratic majorities, that there would not be a Republican that would get through legislative confirmation without being supportive and learned as it relates to those issues.
Okay. This was a question that came in the debate, the one big debate we had with the NJ Globe, and I differed from everybody else up there. The specific question was around the next Supreme Court, state Supreme Court justice that the governor has an opportunity to appoint. Would we commit to the norms that have been in New Jersey for some period of time, Republican, Democrat, Independent? The other 5 people said yes, they would commit to it, and I said no, I will appoint a Democrat, and I'm going to tell you why, okay? First of all, I believe that the courts should reflect the population of the state of New Jersey. The fact that you have 1 million more Democrats in New Jersey, and it is a silly outcome to say, well, now we should have a balanced court because that has been the precedent. It's outnumbered disproportionately from a Democratic side. That is the values that have been reflected in the state, and the court should reflect that. That's number one. Number 2 is, I think as Democrats, we need to understand that those old rules that we continue to play by are no longer accepted by the other side. And those things are at risk. And so we need to be clear on that So I said, I was the only one. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the exact opposite, because if I have the opportunity to protect the things that I care about, that we're talking about today, it is important that you have justices there for the terms that they can be there that protect those things. It's a democratic state. Million more Democrats. There is no reason. There's the House members. When we think about how the House is gerrymandered, it is gerrymandered to reflect the population of the state. You have, what do we have? 9 Democrats, 10 Democrats, and three Republican districts, something like that, right? The courts should reflect the population of the state. We are a blue state, and the court should reflect that.
I think we're probably, unfortunately, coming to our end. So I think at this point, I would have to ask you if you could mind just closing remarks.
Look. Thanks. I want to say thank you for coming out today. It's inspiring that, hundreds of people come out on what is it today, Tuesday? Wednesday night, and want to talk and understand.
It's okay, I came last night.
All right. You're excited. What can I tell you? Look, I think this is a moment in time where bold leadership is important. And you need a fighter. I think those are 2 attributes that are more important now than ever. I'm going to tell you that I stand alone in that lane. Forget about bios and history and all that stuff. Look at the immediate history. There is a reason that when Bob Menendez is indicted the first time and then has a hung jury, and he comes out on those court steps, and there are a gaggle of reporters, and people think he should be contrite and remorseful and say thank you to the justice system, he attacks me, okay? There is a reason that when Chris Christie targeted municipalities around Bridgegate, it was Jersey City and Fort Lee. There is a reason that George Norcross would convene meetings in 2017 and 2018, anybody but Steve Fulop. The reason is because they know.
Our county chairman said anybody but Steve Fulop also.
Yeah, well, look. There is a reason. There is a reason because I push hard for things that I believe. I have a lot of scars for it, and they certainly know that the status quo will no longer exist should I get elected. I tell you about bold leadership. Okay. I said earlier that Phil Murphy did some good things, and I believe that to be true, but I don't think he's been bold enough at all. I tell you that if you think about leaders that are really difference makers, you could be synonymous with one accomplishment that you say, over their term, they did X, Y, and Z, and they pushed people and they showed leadership in an uncomfortable territory. I mean, think about it. Rudy Giuliani before he went crazy. Crime in New York was a different conversation. The squeegees, the squeegee people, it was a different. Think about Mayor Bloomberg, smoking in bars, right? It was a crazy idea to say, I'm going to ban this. You used to have to take a shower. It smelled like smoke if you just went out with your friends. Those are crazy. Universal pre-K. I tell Bill de Blasio, Pinelands and Highlands, Jim McGreevey, Chris Christie, the toolbox pension reform, whether you like it or you don't like it, pushed for things that were uncomfortable. If Phil Murphy was standing here today, he would tell you, I've done some good things, and he has. We funded the pension. I would say we should fund the pension. It's important, and everybody will commit to that. He would say, well, we have cannabis. I would say, okay, cannabis, 15 other states legalized cannabis when we legalized it. He would say, we raised the minimum wage. I would say Jersey City did it first, and by the time you raised to $15, there were another 15 states that did it. It's still a poverty wage, okay? I think that you are in a moment in time more than ever that you want somebody that has a track record of bold leadership and is willing to get into the fight on your behalf. I got a track record of both of those, unlike any other candidate up here. I'm going to say one thing. I'm not asking for your vote today. I really am not. We got a long way till June 10th. The one ask that I have, you leave here and you spend some time on each of our websites. That's it. That's it. Take an hour, take 2 hours, whatever it is. Go to all 6 of us and then look at the Republicans as well. I say that because I know, as sure as I am standing here, that if you do that and you are fair, you will sign up as a volunteer to help me get elected. I know that. I know that. One last thing before I hand it over to you is that if you look at New Jersey, okay, if you look at New Jersey, they would say this candidate is going to win because they have all these political machines. They have these political chair people that predetermine who's selected. So you have these things, and that is the reason why that person is going to be selected, okay? That's the way it works in New Jersey. The rest of the country looks at it and says, who has the most volunteers? We do. Who has the most labor support? It's us and one other. Who has the most lawn signs signed up? We do. Who raised the most money? We do. And we're doing it despite the fact that it's uncomfortable. When Josh or Mikey gets an endorsement and they roll out, here's a piece of paper with 150 people in Essex County or Bergen County that are supporters of mine. I'm going to tell you what that is. That is the county chairperson going to council people and mayors in municipalities and say, do you want to add your name to a sheet of paper because we're supporting so-and-so? And most people say, I don't want any trouble. You could add my name, no problem. And then the candidate goes out and says, look at this paper, I got 100 people. My endorsements are different because when somebody chooses to stand with me, they are in an uncomfortable place. They get pressure, they get scrutinized, they could lose money. It's an uncomfortable place, and people are willing to do that. When Shelley Brindle, the mayor of Westfield, her entire career was in a C-suite in HBO with a global portfolio of responsibilities. Her entire career was about elevating women into prominent positions. When she tells you Steve Fulop is the right person to be the governor, you should listen to her. When Sheena Column, the mayor of South Orange, in Mikey's district, and Sheena is a boss mayor, anybody would tell you that. When she tells you Steve Fulop is the right person to be governor, you should listen to that. I'm asking you to spend some time on the websites because I do believe if you look at it fairly, you will understand what I'm saying and how we intend on changing New Jersey.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm coming up front because I want to make sure no one's going to leave. So, and Steve, speaking of which, do not leave with my pen. Thank you very much. There is so much to talk about. I'm listening to you saying, God, Steve and I have a lot of the same enemies. I'm smiling to myself. Although we both, after the mistrial of Menendez, supported it. We all make mistakes. But we make some as well. But we learn, right? What I wish we could learn and talk a little bit more about are so many of the issues. I'm just going to mention one, and that's childcare. Mike Cheryl is working closely with Elizabeth Warren as it relates to dealing with the unaffordable childcare that's such a problem in this country. A country right back in the day, you didn't have to go to school until you were 16. Or we changed the law, you have to go to school, they took you out of school. Or we changed the law to go with the times. We've got to change the law now so that there's universal care for children. And it's it moves down the line, right? Because then if you have a mom or a dad, whoever it is to stay at home, who can afford to work, they're going to make more money. They're going to be able to build generational wealth. And so that's one of the primary tenets of Governor Cheryl, if she's elected, to move and proceed on, and something that I hope that you all thoughtfully think about. Here's what I really want you to think about. I started by saying that I'm such a proud Democrat and an unabashed progressive. I'm never prouder to be in a room like this, to be next to Mayor Phillips, to be near all of you. You have no idea how much energy I get from that. And each of you are the core of our party. We are going to be why democracy survives. And thanks for inspiring me. And I think if the other candidates weren't here, I know Mike would, they'd be inspired as well. Just keep this in mind. Chris Christie defunded Planned Parenthood. Right? Keep this in mind. The other fund that they did to us.
Pension funds.
Yeah, well, pension funds, a whole other deal. But I mean, we have a lot to say. So please, whoever, and this process is great, whoever is our candidate, let's say that we're fighting for our lives, because we are, for the lives of our children and our grandchildren.
Please tell the representatives to stay in their jobs.
Hey, yeah, you did a good job, Senator.
I want to thank everybody for attending. I'm available if you want to speak.
You're a good ambassador.
Yeah, thanks.
And you are very good on the legislation. And a lot of what I tell you, I know. You're on the wrong team.
So what I want to mention to you, years ago, my firm representative, remember the name James Fan?
James who?
Fan? He was like one of your early supporters.
Yeah.
He got friends with Jeremy, and there was a case that you sent to us involving some environmental issue.
Yeah.
So this is literally
Yeah.
10 years ago. Someone reached out recently and was looking for a sum of money. It turns out the money that we got from you guys, about $750,000, is just sitting there. Not in our accounts, but it's somewhere that no one kind of knew where it was. So
Okay. I'll follow up with you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.